What's going on YouTube? CyberOptek here with a brand new video for you today, and in this video we are completing our series on learning how to make a full weapon skin from start to finish for CS2. Now inside of this video, the first thing we're going to talk about is checking your colors. This is extremely important before you get to the process of publishing your weapon. You always want to go back and make sure that all of your colors are fitting within the proper PBR ranges. Sometimes when you are doing this, you can run into some small problems. We're going to be talking about that, some different ways that you can fix those issues. And then we're going to be talking about wear patterns. This is usually one of the last things that I do inside of my project. However, you really want to make sure that you have your wear pattern set up properly before you submit your weapon. And then finally, at the end of this video, I'm going to hit that publish button. We're going to walk through those steps very briefly, show you guys the final steps that you want to go through when submitting your weapon to the workshop. So that's what this video is going to be about. So anyways, let's go. So now that we have all of our maps finished, usually the next step for me is to bring my design over inside of the workshop. And real quickly, I just want to check all of my colors to make sure that they are sitting within the proper PBR ranges. Now, in order to do this, once you are inside the workshop, we can just simply open up a command prompt and type in the command mat_Fulbright and add the number 10 to it. Now, when we click enter, you should be able to see if you have any problems inside of your design. This is going to be indicated by flashing blue lights. Now, as you guys can see here, I do have some problems that I'm going to have to go back and fix. So the next thing we're going to talk about inside of this video are the reasons why this could be happening, and also the ways that you can go back and fix errors like this inside of your project. Now, whenever you run into failures like this, there could be multiple different reasons why this is happening. The first one I'm going to talk about, of course, is your colors. Now, as you are working on your project, you are adding a lot of different things to it, such as material masks and roughness. And sometimes these can push you outside of that range, even if you have set your color to be inside of the range. So one of the things that you could try is just to simply lighten up the parts of your weapon that are failing inside of your design. Now, you could try to go back inside of Blender and lighten some of your parts up. However, you are going to run into a lot of extra work if you do it that way. You will remember when we created our image texture to add all of our colors to, we actually had to set a base color inside of it, and there is no way to go back now and change that. So in order to do this inside of Blender, you would actually have to delete your image file. You would have to create a new one and go back and re-add all of your graphics. That's just going to be a lot of extra work. However, there is a little bit easier way of doing this. Since we have all of our UVs separated out, we can just bring them over inside of Photoshop and use adjustment tools in order to lighten up certain parts of our project. So real quickly, I'm just going to go and find my grip and bring it inside of my project. We're going to go right here while this layer is selected. We're going to go to adjustments, and we just want to pick selective color. We want to make sure that the color that we are affecting is our neutral, since this is the dark part that's failing. Then we can just take this black slider and just kind of bump this up a little bit. And now, as you can see, it has lightened up all of those parts. Now, one thing to pay attention to, if you are using this method, be sure to make note of what this number is in case you need to use it at other times inside of your project. Then once all of this is set up, we can just go in here and delete our background out. And now we can export this and then create a new TGA file that we can then upload to the workshop. So now that I have re-uploaded my TGA file with all of our changes, let's just check our colors again. Let's type in our mat Fulbright command and hit enter. And this time you'll notice that I no longer have any of those flashing blue lights right here on the back part of my grip. By simply going in and adjusting my color, I was able to fix all of those errors. Now, obviously, this is going to change the color of your grip. It is going to lighten it up a little bit. However, if you want to, you can also go back inside of your AO and darken your mask up just enough to where it'll bring this color back down to where you want it. So that's one way that you can go in and fix small little PBR errors inside of your project. A couple of other very important points that I wanted to make when it comes to checking your colors. First and foremost, you will notice that we have actually been checking these at factory new. However, depending on which paint kit you are using, sometimes the wear patterns can act a little bit different inside of your project. Since we are using the gunsmith, it's actually going to darken up certain parts as it becomes more battle scarred, and this can actually cause you to have even more problems inside of your project. So to give you guys an example of this, I'm just going to turn this all the way up to battle scarred and hit preview. And one thing you will notice is now we have a bunch of new flashing blue parts inside of our project. So this is just something I wanted to make you guys aware of. It's usually good practice to be checking your weapons at battle scarred rather than factory new, because it can present certain problems inside of your design that you may not see when you have this set to factory new. The other key point I wanted to make when it comes to checking your colors is to be aware of these color boxes right here. You'll notice that inside of the gunsmith, we have this base metal, this patina tint, this patina wear, and this patina grime, as well as making sure that your colors are within the PBR range inside of your albedo maps. You also want to be aware of that right here as well. Now you'll notice that I have changed these two colors to be very dark, and you will see that we do have a lot of flashing blue inside of our project. If I bump both of these up, let's just go ahead and turn both of these up real quick and make them a lot brighter. If I now hit preview inside of my project, you'll notice that it has fixed a lot of those little errors. So that's just something I wanted to point out to you guys. Just be very aware of the colors that you are adding right here inside of the workshop, because if they are too dark, it can cause you to have certain problems inside of your design. Now, one thing you may have noticed when I brought my weapon over inside of the workshop, the parts that were failing were right in the creases where certain parts overlap inside of the UV. And one of the reasons I thought this was happening was due to the fact that my margins were not large enough whenever I was burning off my color maps. However, I did discover that there was something else going on here, and this was actually brought up to me by a viewer on this channel. Whenever you add a transparent background to your UVs, the game is going to interpret this transparent background as being black. It really doesn't matter what size margins you set. To demonstrate this on this grip right here, I've actually set my margins to be 16 pixels, while I set my margin to be 1 pixel on everything else. I'm just going to go in here and create a layer. I'm just going to fill this background in with a red. That way we can actually see the creases. And then I'm going to bring this over inside of the workshop so that you can see the difference between the different margin sizes once you bring this over into the game. So now you guys can see the results that we got by adding the red background to our UV. You'll notice that I have these little creases that are running all the way through my design. But the one thing to pay attention to is that I set my grip to 16 pixels and I set my slide to 1. And regardless of what size I made my margins, these creases are still there. So simply increasing the size of your margins are not going to fix these. Now, if you so choose, you could go in and add some background colors behind your albedo. You know, maybe you want to add a gray behind the grip pieces and a green behind the slide piece. You can kind of play around with that a little bit. My advice would be to just leave them as is. If they're not failing inside of your project, there's really not any need to do this. But just be aware, if you do add a solid color to the entire background, then the crease color is going to be the same throughout your entire design. So that's the other thing to be aware of. But this is just something that I wanted to point out to you guys. It was brought up to me by a viewer. I did think it was important to talk about because obviously this is going to be something that you're going to notice. But real quickly, I just wanted to explain to you guys exactly where this was coming from and the ways that you would go about fixing this if you so choose. So the next thing we're going to talk about inside of this video are alpha channels and wear patterns. Now at this point inside of your project, you need to start trying to figure out what you want your weapon to look like at battle scarred. Let's say, for example, we have this graphic right here, and maybe we do not want this graphic to wear off at all. However, we want the rest of this slide to have a lot of wear on it. You know, those are just design decisions that you're going to have to make before you actually start setting up the grayscale values for your wear patterns. The key thing to know when it comes to setting up your wear patterns are the values that you need to be staying within. Now, as you can see on the diagram here, we start off at a value of 0, which of course is going to be black. Anything that has a black added to it is actually not going to wear at all. Then as you move further up this grayscale to 128, you're going to have more of a normal wear pattern. But the big thing to remember is this max wear value right here, which is 196. This is also going to be a hexadecimal code of C4C4C4. You will remember in the last video where I talked about certain parts of your weapon not showing up because of the alpha channel. That's because all of the colors that were in the alpha channel at that point were a value of 255, making them wear off at factory new. So that's just something to be aware of. Whenever you are setting up your grayscales for your wear patterns, you always want to stay somewhere between a value of 0 and 196. You will remember from video number 4, I had you guys create 2 separate files, both a PSD and a TGA file. And the reason for this is that anytime you create a TGA file, it's actually going to take all of your layers and merge it into one. If we want to go in and set an individual wear for each different part of our weapon, we're going to have this separated into layers. So real quickly, I'm just going to open up my PSD file. I'm also going to move it right here to the front. Now, as you can see, we have all of our different layers. We can go in and add a separate value to each individual piece. You're also going to want to have both of these open whenever you are working on your wear patterns. You're going to create your grayscales here inside of your PSD file. Then you're just going to bring them over to your TGA file and paste them. The next thing you're going to want to do is go right here to your channels tab. We just want to delete our default alpha out of our project. And then we just want to go down here to the bottom and add a new alpha that's solid black. So those are the first initial steps that you're going to take whenever you are setting up the wear patterns for your design. So now that both of our files are set up, the next thing we want to do is go in and start adding our colors. Now, normally whenever I work on wear patterns, I like to start with one piece. I like to bring it back over inside of the workshop to see exactly what is happening to the wear on that part. So first and foremost, I'm just going to start off with my slide right here. The first thing I want to do is just go down through this list and just hide every single layer that we're not going to be working on. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on this layer. We're going to go to blending options, and then we just want to turn on color overlay. We can then go to this box right here. We can go in, we can select the grayscale value that we want to add to that part of the weapon. Then once we have our grayscale, the next thing we want to do is go right here to the top. We want to go to select all, and then finally go to edit, and then copy merged. Whenever you use copy merged, it's only going to copy the active layers over here inside of our list. So let's just select copy merged. Next, we're going to go back over to our TGA file. With our alpha selected, we're just going to hit Control-Shift-V on our keyboard. And now, as you can see, it has pasted this in place. The next step would be to save this off as a TGA file and then bring it over inside of the workshop so we can see exactly what this is going to look like. So now that we are inside of the workshop, we can take a look at this. At this point, if you are happy with this, you can move on to other parts of your weapon. However, if you are not happy, we can go back inside of Photoshop and continue to edit this piece. Now, as long as you are editing the TGA file that you have connected to the workshop, we can actually do this in real time. So let's go back to Photoshop. Let's just delete this grayscale out of our alpha. I'm going to go back over here and double click on color overlay and change my color. Let's just bump this up a little bit. I'm going to hit edit, copy merged, go back over here to my TGA and just paste this. I'm going to go right up here to File and Save. Then if I go back over here to the workshop and hit Preview again, we should now see that there is more wear added to that part of the weapon. So that's just something I wanted to show you guys. Sometimes when you are working on wear patterns, it's often a lot easier if you are working on the TGA file that's actually connected to the game files. You can go back and forth between Photoshop and edit these things a little bit at a time until you get them to look exactly how you want them. One key point I wanted to make about wear patterns as it relates to the workshop, you may have noticed when I went in and changed my grayscale that the wear on my slide only changed very slightly. A lot of this has to do with the paint kit that I'm using, which of course is the Gunsmith. Now, if we were to take this same design and move it over into another paint kit, let's say for example, the custom paint job, if we go and preview this, you'll now notice that we get an entirely different result, even though we are using the exact same TGA. So this is just something I wanted to make you aware of. You know, depending on what it is you are trying to do inside of your design, you may have to pick a paint kit in order to get that desired result. One final point I wanted to make about doing your wear patterns inside of Photoshop. You will remember from the videos where we were talking about AOs, where we actually brought an albedo in and used it as a mask inside of our project. Just keep in mind that you can also do the same thing whenever you are doing your wear patterns. So for example, if we wanted the graphics on our weapon to have a different wear from the rest of the slide, we could select our magic wand tool, go in and select all of these parts, create a new layer for them, and then paste onto that layer. Then we could add a different color overlay to the graphics, and they would wear separately from the rest of the slide. So that's just one final key point that I wanted to make when it comes to doing your wear patterns inside of Photoshop. So the next thing we're going to talk about inside of this video is how to set up your wear patterns inside of Gimp. The first step in this process is, of course, to open up your file that has all of your different albedos inside of it. Then once this file is open, you just want to select this top layer. You want to right click, and then you want to go to New from Visible. This will create a visible layer that has all of these other layers merged into one. Next, we're going to right click on this again, and we're just going to go to Add Layer Mask. Now, you will have several different options here. You can use black if you so choose. For this example, though, I'm actually going to be using the white, and then I'm just going to click Add. So that's going to be the initial setup steps that you're going to go through whenever you want to do wear patterns inside of Gimp. So the next step in this process would be to go down through this list and hide all of these layers that we do not need. To start with, I'm just going to work on my slide right here. So I'm just going to go down through and hide all of these other layers. Then once all of these are hidden, the next thing you want to do is highlight the layer that you want to work on. You want to go right up here to your tools, and you just want to select this fuzzy select tool. Then once this is selected, you just want to go anywhere in this open area and just click. And now, as you can see, all of these edges have been highlighted. So real quickly, I'm just going to hide this layer. I'm going to select my mask up here. I'm going to go up. I want to select the grayscale color that I want to add to this piece. Once I have my color, I'm going to go to my fill tool, and then I just want to go right here inside of these areas and just fill this in. Now, one thing you may notice is up next to my cursor, you will see the little circle with the line through it. This means that I currently cannot fill inside of this area. However, if I move to the outside, it gives me the option to fill, and we actually need to invert this. So the way that you do this is by hitting Control-I on your keyboard. And then once you move inside of here, you'll notice that you can now fill this in. So let's just go ahead and click it and fill in this part. Now, at first, you may not notice these changes, but if you look over here inside of this white mask, you'll notice that we now have some gray pieces. Also, if we make this layer visible, you'll now see that this part of the weapon is transparent. So basically, the next step would be to go down through all of these layers and just follow those same steps. You just want to go in and add a mask for all of the different pieces of your weapon. Then once you have that done, you just want to hide all of these layers. You want to make sure that this is the only one that's visible. You want to go up here to File, Export, and then you just want to save this off as a TGA file. So now I have brought this over into the workshop to see what this looks like. Now, because we added a solid white mask to our Gimp project, everything is going to wear very quickly. You'll notice that all the colors are already worn off of certain parts of our weapon. However, I did add a dark mask to the grip just so it would not wear as much as the slide. So real quickly, I'm just going to turn this down to battle scarred and then preview it again. And now, as you can see, our slide is very much worn. Now, just as we did inside of Photoshop, you can do this in real time as long as you are working on the TGA file that is connected to the workshop. Whenever you are in Gimp, you can go back, you can re-edit those colors as you so wish, then come back to the workshop and preview them until you get it right. So those are going to be the basic processes that you're going to use anytime you want to do wear patterns inside of Gimp. Now, at this point inside of our project, we are pretty much ready to start publishing our weapon. We have added our albedo texture with all of the alpha channels behind it for our wear patterns. We have done all of our settings. We've created our roughness and added it. We've created our normal, our material mask, and our ambient occlusion. So the final step in this process is going to be to click the publish button. Now, once this opens up, you will see I already have a bunch of submissions here. You're just going to want to click on this plus button. You're going to want to give your design a name. You're going to want to give it a description. At this point, you are going to have to give it a photo. So you probably want to go ahead and have your photos ready before you start to submit it so that you can add it right here. Then you just want to go down here and click on public and then finally submit. Now, another thing, if you have not already set up all of your billing information inside of Steam, you're also going to have to do that. I'm not really going to talk about that inside of this video, but from this point on, you guys should be able to figure the rest of it out. So that is, in a nutshell, just a very, very basic skin from start to finish using all of the different programs like Gimp, Blender, Photoshop, and Inkscape. So this is the final video in our series on learning how to make a full weapon skin from start to finish inside of CS2. And hopefully you guys really enjoyed this series. Now, you may have noticed that I have not had a lot of new content out on my channel in a while. That's because we have been working on this for several months now to try to get this done. A lot of time and preparation went into it. I really wanted to try to answer as many questions up front as possible. I also wanted to split these videos up a little bit more into chapters to give you guys a way to go back and reference certain things. So if you're only looking for a specific piece of information, it's easier for me to point that out to you and say, here, go check this part of this video out. This is where you'll find that information. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video series, and I cannot wait to see what you guys do with this on the workshop. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this series. I really appreciate it. If you would, please leave likes or comments down below and make sure and hit that subscribe button because it really helps this channel out a lot. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next video.